just tell us about who you are, your background, why you're an atheist, how you're a human atheist perhaps, and Axiological Atheism. It's all yours.
All right. Hi, I'm Damien re AtHope, and I'm an Axiological Atheist, which real quick I'll just say is basically a value theory or a value science atheist. So anyways, if you don't know what value theory is, it's basically a form of, if you think of what's ethics, what's before ethics is basically your value structures that you use to motivate, support, and build and categorize your what you think is ethical. And as far as about my life, so I was raised in a fundamental this Christian background, especially before I was 13. I was raised in a Christian cult, and it's called the Local Church, and it's by Witness Lee, and it basically is almost like a form of closest regular religion to it would be probably Jehovah's Witness. It's kind of like that. Don't celebrate any birthdays. Don't celebrate any holidays. We didn't do sports. We didn't watch TV. We didn't listen to the radio. Well, one day a week, for an hour, we'd watch Mutual of Omaha. But that was it. And the TV was in my dad's closet in his bedroom. And my dad was very, very strict in that. In fact, my mom had a car to go to work, and he actually pulled the stereo out of her car so that she wouldn't be tempted to accidentally listen to something that wasn't Christian. And it's just the way that my whole family was. There was a lot of abuse. I suffered neglect. I suffered from being starved. I was spanked. I had my tailbone broken. My dad hit me with a 2x4. And he was all about, fear. God was a love God. And as a child, I never doubted God. I always thought that my parents would just had at least my dad especially, had a very weird version of Christianity. I thought that maybe his version or how he was portraying it was absolutely false. And my mom, she divorced my dad about 7, and she became an evangelical Pentecostal non-denominational Christian, the kind that sings in tongues and dances in the aisles. And I also thought that was a very bizarre form of Christianity. I tried to speak in tongues one time. Just wasn't. I was trying. If my parents, you're a child, your parents tell you, do this, believe this. I tried. I could not get that speaking in tongues. But I never doubted God, ever, in my entire life, until I was 36. So my whole life, I believed in God, and but I had a lot of abuse. So because of the abuse, I ended up, especially in Southern California, drugs were available. I became a drug addict and alcoholic. At 15, I had my heart stopped from smoking crack. At 17, I had liver failure, and I went into rehab. And in the rehab, I got sober. Once I got sober, they said that we needed to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. When I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, they started talking about higher powers and God. And I already believed in God, so that wasn't that big of an issue. And it actually made me end up becoming more Christian in Alcoholics Anonymous. So when I did that, I started becoming more interested in knowledge, because as a kid, my parents felt like had been pushing on me. So I went and got the NIV Bible, and I read the whole thing. Well, actually, I listened to it on tape. I was a truck driver, but same difference to me. But I listened to it on tape as I was driving the trucks around the United States. And it was really profound to me to listen to it, because there was a lot of stuff that I didn't really know. And then I ended up also feeling that, because I would hear some people, oh, well, you have to read it in the King James Version. So I thought, okay, maybe that's better. So I got the King James Version, and I listened to all of that. And I also bought an onion paper Bible that was real thin and stuff. It was like $150 or something. So proud of it, and I just read it all the time. And for me, I just never doubted. I didn't have any friends that were atheists. I didn't even know what an atheist was. I never really questioned. I thought things were odd, but I felt like the Bible was true. It had to be true. It was told it was. And so I just believed absolutely everything the Bible said. And anything that was presented, I just didn't believe because the Bible was correct. And I just thought that some people that were Christians just did it in an odd way. So, anyways, when I was a truck driver, I ended up started training other truck drivers. When I started training other truck drivers, I started realizing I had an aptitude to teach people, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing people flourish and learn things. And I was also, sober. So I was about 18 years or something sober, and I also had injured myself in a truck accident. And I thought, well, I can do something a lot less, physical than I'm doing now. I can become, a drug and alcohol counselor because I really wanted to help people, and I've been sober for a while, so I'll be able to, relate to them and help them, them get better. And so I started taking college courses, and that's really when it started for me to start doubting God. Especially the first thing that in biology learned that everybody basically starts out as a female or a default of intersex, either female in a sense or male. But everyone has an X, and an X is all you need to make a female. And that to me, that started me doubting, not God, but started me doubting that the Bible was correct. That it had the sequence of reality, correct. Because I'm thinking, well, if we all come from a man, from Adam, how come that when it comes to the chromosomes, it's the other way around? We all come from female. It started seeming odd to me. Something's not right. And of course, I had cognitive dissonance. I didn't want God or the Bible to be wrong. I just feel, well, maybe maybe something's just inaccurate. This is the Old Testament anyways. It's not the New Testament, and Jesus is still true. But then I was told, because I was going into the addictions field and I wanted to be an addictions counselor, it would be most beneficial for me to actually learn about other world religions. Because, in a sense, even though Alcoholics Anonymous says, you have to have a higher power, it doesn't distinctly say it has to be the Christian Jesus higher power. So I didn't want to take the class. It's so weird to me now. It's like I didn't want to learn about other religions. But I actually knew nothing. I mean, if you had asked me to label, or tell you 5 religions off the top of my head, I couldn't have done it. I can tell you 10 now, easily. More than that, probably. So when I took this class, it was so funny. I knew that all the religions that I was going to be presented were wrong, even though I had not heard one word of them. I just knew they weren't Christian, so they were wrong. Although I think about it now, how did I even know Christianity was right? I just, from what, luck of birth? How lucky I was that I was taught the one true religion and everyone else is born into a religion is wrong. But anyway, so as I started doing the classes, and it was really irritating to me, I actually hated learning stuff about other religions. Because I felt like it was just filling my mind with, nonsense. But the more I started learning, I started seeing, man, there's really a kind of a common pattern. That they all say that their way is the true way. Their morality is the true morality. Their way to the afterlife is the correct afterlife, and only they know what the correct afterlife is. I was like, man, all these religions are wrong, but they're wrong in kind of a similar way. And my Christianity at the time was kind of the same as all these other religions. I didn't really see that it was doing that much different than the other ones. And so I started doubting a little bit. Still didn't really doubt God. I just started doubting Christianity. Maybe Christians don't have the right answer. It wasn't that I felt that Christianity was wrong. I just started doubting. I started going, well, all these are man-made. Is it possible that Christianity is man-made too? And then they told me that I had to take a class on the Bible. And I thought, whoa, shit, man, this is going to be the class that I'm going to get an A in. My whole life is being a Christian. I've read the Bible twice. This class is going to be the easiest class in college ever. It was one of the hardest classes that I had in college. It was extremely hard for me. One of the reasons was it was hard to hear things that I didn't want to hear. And I had to write them down because we had to write papers on it. And they started talking about stuff that I didn't know. They started talking about how the archaeological facts and how anthropology and how it relates this to that and these verses. They started to teach me stuff, and it was like very hard for me to hear. And how the Noah flood is the same as almost as the Epic of Gilgamesh. They started showing tablets, and I started having a real problem being able to stay so strong in my belief in Christianity. I mean, it really started. And the class wasn't even like an atheist class. It was just teaching you different facts about the Bible. But when it did it started making me realize, man, I don't know real facts. I know all these beliefs. I have all these things I have faith in. But it's not matching the reality of the truth of the world. And what really got me halfway through the class, they had a thing about Satan, and that is the one point right there when I learned that stuff, I stopped believing completely. And it basically they explained that Satan, Lucifer, the devil, serpent, all different things, not the same thing. And they showed with the verses how that could be so. And it blew me away, especially to me. I think it's Genesis 3, where it says the serpent is the most crafty of the creatures created in the garden. So it's not no fallen anything. That to me was like, I feel like I had never read the Bible. I remember reading that verse and being so shocked that it actually said that I called my mom up and I told her, did you know this? And she's like, well, yeah, but I guess I didn't see as much emphasis as you're making on it. That's a big deal to me. Because isn't it Paul that says that the angel fell into the garden and, tricked a woman? I'm like seriously confused here. And then also they said that Lucifer, that word, the light bearer, had to do with the king of Babylon and was a mistranslation in the King James Bible. It had never had anything to do with Satan, the serpent, or the devil. And they even showed us that there was like this concordance, passage that explains that. The Christian concordance explains that. And then I had a Bible with concordance, so I'm looking through there, and I'm thinking it can't be in there. And I looked, it was in there, and I could call my mom, and again, because I'm almost fundamentalist Christian. And I said, did you know this? And she said, well, I still believe in Lucifer is the devil. I go, how could you? It says, even in the Bible concordance, it says that this is a mistranslation. And she said, well, I still believe. I'm like, that right there started making me think. You're going to still believe when you're shown the actual facts that disprove what you believe. And I was thinking, I'm not doing that. I cannot, will not just believe things because I want to. And it was very, very, very profound to me. I started really, really thinking about it. And it was like I got a hot flash, almost like to me, like an atheist born again or whatever. I got this like feeling over me, and because it was basically a realization that I had been believing a lie that I wanted to believe with no basis in fact, and then was being shown contradictory facts that disproved it. Just like it showed us that archaeology basically disproves the entire historicity of the Bible up until King David. It's just not fact. And I'm not going to believe things that are not fact. And I thought, well, if the Bible is going to be lying like this, my mom would try to go, oh, well, but we really got to focus on the New Testament, not the Old Testament. Yeah, but if the New Testament is true, Jesus came down and he knew about the Old Testament. If the Old Testament was inaccurate to Jesus, he would have said, this part is inaccurate. Don't follow this part. This was not true. Jesus never said that as far as the Gospels that are, written today say. He didn't say any part of the Bible was inaccurate. So you can't deny, at least for me, I couldn't deny any part of the Old Testament. How could I? Jesus never said it was false. And it really started making me go, you know what? Thus, even Jesus is false. It's all false. It's false because it connects to things that are false. And I was done right then and there. I went from full belief to God, and I'm done. I was completely already done. I didn't even know what an atheist was, though. So I remember someone asking me, "Well, if you don't believe in God, are you an atheist?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't think so. Doesn't an atheist, aren't they against God or something? I don't believe in one anymore." I didn't know what the word meant. So it was hard because you go from your whole life, it's all about this belief, and then all of a sudden, everything that you thought you were basing your whole life on, you now don't believe in. I didn't even know what to do. I mean, I felt absolutely empty inside. I felt like my brain had fallen out, or like somehow I had never used my brain. It was like showing me stuff that was right in front of my face I had never seen, never willing to look at. I was dumbfounded. And I started thinking, well, I need to understand stuff. So I got online and started talking to other atheists, but I quickly, got off of it because they're saying, well, this and that, and about things. I didn't want to just believe again. I was even not sure I wanted to believe what atheists had to say. How do I know that they know anything? I've been lied to my whole life. I don't feel like I have this large justification to believe anybody. So I felt pretty frustrated because I felt like, man, I don't know what to do. I felt like I'm lost. But of course, college was still going, and so that we took an ethics class, and I thought, oh, the savior, let's do ethics. Morality, because at least I can figure out how to run my life, even if I can't figure out what to believe. And when I took the ethics class, they made the most, to me, ridiculous statement. They said, "Okay, everybody, we're going to go through," it was 10 different kinds of ways to approach ethics, and go ahead and pick whichever feels the best to you. I'm like, oh, excuse me, what? How can you pick which ethics are best? Isn't it ethics? How can there not be some that are more preferable and some less preferable? How can there be no standard at all? It just that sounded bizarre to me. How can that be true? And I said, well, certainly there's got to be some that are more beneficial and some that are more destructive. Otherwise, then how could we judge ethics in general? I said, well, sometimes we can't. And that also felt very uncomfortable to me. What? How can we not know? And they're like, well, you just do what's good. And I'm like, well, what's good? Because, if you ask what's good, not every single person in the world will have the same definition of what they think good is. So I felt really confused. But they also taught us about divine command theory. And they said that, that's pretty much a lot of what the Bible is basically doing. God makes a law and tells people to do it, and then they just follow it. And I realized, well, at least I now realize that is nonsense. That, to me, was the beginning of me understanding ethics, was that there was a nonsense ethics. It was called divine command theory. The fact of someone just telling you something does not make it moral. And so I started basing it, but how do I gauge all these other ones that seem contradictory, that they can't, or not able to work together correctly? They taught us about care ethics and utilitarian ethics, and anyway, so I was like, how do we judge between, or what should we use between these two? There has to be some way to do it. And that's when I really started searching hard. They did not tell us in class about axiology, but it was me just having an absolute hunger for finding out how do we establish ethics. So I learned that there's things called meta-ethics. There's the ethics of ethics, and there's the evaluation of ethics. And so I started getting into how do we evaluate ethics, because I wanted to know. I don't want to just believe something because I like it. That just sounds like faith to me. And so I started getting into metaethics, and I said, well, metaethics, how do they evaluate the metaethics? Where does all this start from? What starts the motivation for ethics, or the contemplation for ethics? And that's when I learned that axiology, which is value and value theory, what you value, you then are motivated to see as ethical. And so I started getting into axiology. I started reading some books on axiology, especially as it related to psychology, because I still was planning on being a psychologist. And I really thought this was important for psychology. I wasn't actually learning this to be an atheist or to do anything in atheism. I thought that, well, if I'm going to be a good psychologist, I need to be caring about the patient. And I need to do what's ethical with them, and then I need to help motivate what's ethical for them so that they can do, more positive, pro-social behaviors. And so I started really caring that, because I didn't want to just tell them to believe me. I wanted to give them a tool they could use to actually find it and navigate the world of ethics themselves. So I started getting into axiology for that reason. And I read a book on Axiology, the New Science of Psychology, or something like that, by Leland Pelham. I can give a book later, but anyways, one of the things he said at the beginning really hit home to me. He said that ethics is too valuable to leave in the hands of philosophy or in the hands of religion. And I thought, wow, that's how I felt. That's exactly what I felt. That it is not right to leave ethics up to these people of faith. Neither is it right to leave up to people just contemplating things and not seeming to figure out what a standard is. And I was like, yeah, I really want to know. And so I after reading the book, he talks about how they did studies on axiology, which how people value judge things. That everyone does. They value wise, is this good, is this bad? And then there's also levels of it. How good, how bad, how much worth, how much, disvalue, how much disworth it has. And so it allowed me to start navigating these concepts. And using an empirical, study with people, they did it in, I think it was 8 countries. And he showed that people have these general things, no matter the nationality or background, they have these general ways of evaluating things. Then I read another book of axiology. I think it's called Answering the Central Question, something like that. Anyways, it's about neuroaxiology. The neuroscientist took axiology and evaluated relating to neuroscience. And he basically says that our brains process things in value structures. That's how we actually were able to analyze the world. Is this good evidence? Is this not? Is this a worthy behavior? Is this not? Is this food good? Is it not? Should this family, should I be treated this way? Anyway, so it's just how we evaluate things in general. And it really made me realize that, I need to do stuff that, as much as possible, that's creating value. And then that also is what got me more into atheism. Because I realized that when I was in class for psychologists, it seemed like they were still too much on religion, especially on the addictions field, because I was still in Alcoholics Anonymous. And here we are praying to a higher power, and it's just, what? It's just nonsense. So I really realized that I had to do something, because it seems like odd that in mental health counseling or psychology, every other thing but addiction uses a medical model or a science-based model, except addiction uses, it seems like, the spirituality or the God model as the main thing. This is odd to me. Either something is true or it's not true, in the sense that if the God model works in addiction, then why doesn't it work anywhere else? And if the medical model works in everything but addiction, are we really assessing addiction correctly? To me, addiction is a behavioral issue. more than just a psychological, emotional one. And so I really feel that it's like saying that someone needs to get over being obsessive compulsive and they need to use the spirituality method. It's just, I find it to be, just unethical in itself. That the therapy is being done, with a spiritual model, which is not based in anything scientific. And in fact, the science is showing otherwise. So because of that, the error I felt in mental health, it was kind of hard for me to be super gung-ho about wanting to be a psychologist. And also just like some of the behaviors and stuff that they were doing, like they told us, make sure you don't record if you can, because you don't want to be taken to court. And I'm like, why would you be saying or doing any behavior in therapy that would matter if you were taken to court? Am I wrong? Shouldn't we be teaching counselors right behaviors, not hide the behaviors? I go, it feels like this whole class is unethical. I was very offended because I started to grasp what really is ethics. And I really realized that, man, these people are doing stuff that is unethical. You're teaching people how to hide their bad behaviors. And so I started doing a research, sociological research, because I also, I have a weird minor, in a sense I didn't have a minor. I had a major and a whole bunch of little minors, sort of. I had basically sociology and addiction, but I also kind of had education and kind of criminal, thinking or behavior or delinquency of children. But it's mainly addiction, I guess, in sociology. But because of the sociology class, I wanted to do a paper on the sociology of counselors, bad behavior. So I started looking into how often do counselors do sexually inappropriate behavior with clients? How often do they do sexual, maybe not fully have sex, but do just inappropriate behaviors? And when I got the stats on it, it blew me away. It's something like 93% of all marriage and family counselors do something that's probably inappropriate. And even the best, the ones with psychologists, I think it was 50%. I was 50%? I mean, this should cause immediate outrage. I mean, they should have had a panel, let's take care of this right now, this is horrific. Nothing. Just absolutely nothing. It reminds me of the Catholic Church. We find out that kids are getting molested, what do? Nothing. In fact, we do opposite of nothing. We hide it. On top of that, then we make laws that says nobody has to actually expose it. The complete opposite of morality to me. The same way I felt like the counseling field. So I really realized that there's a bigger problem to the counseling field than just morality, though, because morality is attached to things to most people. And so I realized it was to me. It was attached to my belief in God. That's probably the same reason why the addiction field has so much God talk, and to me, so much lack of morality. Anyway, so because of that, I started going, maybe I need to focus on something different. Maybe now that I understand this, maybe I should focus on trying to remove the God problem and trying to push the morality issue more in the axiology. So I started doing that, and the more I did that, the more I realized I needed to learn first. And so I started learning philosophy. I'm an autodidact when it comes to philosophy, science, archaeology, anthropology, history of religion. All that stuff I learned on my own. Axiology, learned it all on my own. So but I had a real hunger because I really wanted to know what is the truth, what is the facts, and the more facts I did, the more I started becoming anti-religionist. And the more I started realizing that the problem is so bad that people are so used to it, they don't see the problem. It reminds me of sexism or racism. When you look out really quick, you can go, oh, I don't see any. But the more you look, the more you find. The more you dig, the more you find. The worse it is. And I started realizing this is a real problem. This really, the counseling field, because like they have a thing that says, what's a delusional belief? Well, as far as counseling is concerned, as long as your culture that you're in believes it's okay, then that's not a delusional belief. So, which is crazy. They don't do that when it comes to like anger or depression, or they don't go, well, what does the culture think of depression? Oh, depression's okay? Well, then depression's not there. Well, if sexism is okay, then it's not there. No, it does everything else except religion does not get a pass. But religion, complete blanket pass. I just, why? Like they said this one thing where they said this counselor or psychologist went to, I think it was Puerto Rico, and this one person said, well, this guy, we want you to see him, he's hearing voices and seeing and talking to the spirits. And then, I believe it's Puerto Rico, but anyway, so he says, yeah, the counselor says, yeah, but don't you guys speak to the ancestors? He said, well, yeah, we talk to them, but they don't actually talk back. We don't actually hear them. So he says, oh, okay, so it's not what's normal. Yeah, oh, okay, then it's a dysfunction. Well, it's ridiculous. Anyone who's talking to other beings, that are not there, is delusional. It shouldn't matter that your culture thinks it's okay. So to me, I know that counseling really has to become medical and not an emotional model. It's an emotional model to say, well, we don't want to label people as delusional when their culture doesn't think they are. Well, I'm sorry, that's like saying, well, if culture thinks that smoking doesn't cause cancer, well, their culture, so let's not call it cancer because they said that smoking doesn't cause cancer, so as long as their culture says it, well, then it has to be, we have to accept that it's true. It's just, to me, absolutely unethical and completely irrational. And so, like I said, because of that, understanding that this was going on, it was offending, seriously offending, my sensibilities. And so I started becoming more and more atheist. And it was shortly after that I started feeling more compelled to read about atheism, that I realized that there was a thing called Axiological Atheism. Well, I was already believing in axiology as a good method to understand things. How awesome that they actually have a term that was for what I did. And also, I forgot to say, when I first started being an atheist, I felt that I was spiritual. Because I didn't understand, like, how you explained that you had a belief in morality or a connectedness to the world. So I was saying that I was a spiritual atheist. And it's odd to me now, because what did that even mean? But once I realized that there was a word that actually encapsulated what I was feeling and how I viewed the world axiologically, and then with an atheist understanding, that was me, man. I started doing everything I could to read as much as I could on axiological atheism. I was pretty unhappy that there's almost nothing out there. Most of the stuff out there was basically Christian philosophers, usually, basically using it as a put down to atheists. Not atheists that even knew that they were doing, in a sense, an axiological atheism thing. So axiological atheism, we go back to that a little bit, is axiological atheism is not, the word atheism can be a misnomer almost in a sense. Because an axiological atheist, let me figure this. So axiological theist thinks that not just that God's real, but that God is valuable. God is necessary for morality, and that human worth, or any worth, is dependent upon a deity. That would be axiological theism, in a sense. Then there's axiological agnosticism, which basically says, I do not know if there's a God, and thus I do not know the value of a said God. There's no way to assess the value of said God if they are valuable or not. Because I cannot assess the value, I do not know if they give value to humans or possibly take away value from humans. I do not know if they're important for morality or not important for morality. I do not know that if they give meaning to life or they don't. So an axiological agnostic basically assumes the position that because I cannot do it, I thus have to go to the default of not believing and not using that as a value source. And an axiological atheist says there is no God, and not only there is no God, it is not worth to humans, it actually is not necessary and actually hurts morality, and it actually, if a God were real, would actually remove meaning, remove worth, and remove value from human life and human endeavors. So it is way stronger than a normal atheist thing, because an atheist basically is just a conclusion that theism fails to meet any criteria to establish its accuracy. So that's not all that an axiological atheist is. An axiological atheist can be thought of as two strong points: strong values in humanism and strong disbelief, both together at the same time. And so, Nietzsche would say, God is dead. Well, an axiological atheist would say, yeah, you're right, God is dead. Not only is God dead, God deserved to die. That myth is harmful, and even if it was a real being, it should be then held accountable for crimes that it said it was done, like say in the Bible, that it's killed the entire earth. That any being that has killed the entire earth, all but for one little family, is a moral monster, deserves to be held accountable for these actions. So it is an ethical reason and a moral argument-driven argument against theism. But it also, in general, would also be somewhat against religion in general, because these are made-up things that people are giving way too much value to, way too much time to. It is actually robbing, humanity from its flourishing on its own, which is kind of what humanism is. That basically that humans can do things by human means, that a God, that holy books, that faith are not needed for this endeavor to happen. So that's kind of what axiological atheism says. It's just a little bit stronger. That if it was real, it's worthless and harmful, especially as has been offered in the books. But also another point, if there was a creator, and the creator had unlimited ability to do whatever it wants, as an axiological atheist, would I create the sensation of pain? No, because pain adds suffering. So the fact that there's pain, see, let's understand too, there's actually bugs do not have pain. They don't have the sensation of pain the way we do. And there's actually a type of ailment in humans that you can get where you basically do not feel pain. And a lot of them don't live a long time, obviously, but there are ones that do live, long lives. It's just not necessary. The world could be done better. Or how about this? Pain only happens when things are bad. I mean, why do they, in other words, what I mean by that is that God could create a world where pain only happens when I stick my finger in a fire. But if I were to be tortured, it could just immediately stop. The pain stops. It doesn't have unlimited pain. The fact that how the world is designed as a form of harm and destruction. The fact that, just think, everything in the world eats something else. Whether it's a bacteria, whether it's a lion, whether it's a human, everything, whether it's a vegetable we're eating or whether it's that whole thing of such a grubby, disgusting way to process life. Why would you even need food? Why not just have people live? I mean, if you have unlimited power, you could do that. And then also, to me personally, things like the Christian God, especially like in the Old Testament, the whole nonsense of making a tree, putting it in the garden, and then when someone commits supposedly this eternal crime. But to me, this is a really an odd thing as an axiological atheist. What would a good parent do? Would a good parent put a loaded weapon in a room with two toddlers, walk out, come back, when the one toddler shot the other one, take the little toddler and put them in prison? Or would you say that a court system would say that's not a good parent? That parent did something that was unethical to begin with. It's not the children's fault, it is the adult's fault, because the adult knows better. And this is very important because God knows everything. So they know better. And the other thing is that before the supposedly Adam and Eve ate of the tree of good and evil, they did not know. So that would be like us today when someone who has a mental handicap, basically punishing them for the full extent of the law as if they understand what they're doing. Even in our court system, we understand that is not ethical, that is not reasonable. When someone doesn't know, it's like we don't punish a 2-year-old the same as we punish a 32-year-old man. We understand there is a difference because we actually apply rationale to our ethics, where what's offered in the book of lies called the Bible, the God is obviously a moral tyrant. The fact that he would do this and then hold them accountable is disgusting alone. The fact that every generation after that is held accountable for what they did is morally repugnant to me. Absolutely vile. It would be like if we were to punish, 10 generations later, or 1,000 generations later, we were to punish someone for what someone else did. Someone says, oh, well, all Christians, are good. We should judge them on their own behavior. Really? Just like your God does. How he judges everyone on the behaviors of Adam and Eve? Because that's really what we need to understand. There is a thing that we have called reason. This does not make sense. Even when I was talking, at the beginning, I was told that I'm an anti-accommodationalist. I don't work with people of religion. I don't have a desire to. And I was told that that's dangerous. Funny that you would say it's dangerous, because it is dangerous to believe things that are horrific. Like you saying, I can't hold every Christian accountable. Funny how you seem to let that be okay when a God does it. When a God holds the whole world, thousands of people, generations, so disconnected from Adam and Eve, but still, that is moral. In fact, to most Christians, that God is the perfect morality. You have got to be kidding. That is not even a bad morality. That is a horrific morality. That is what I call pseudo-morality. It is not even moral. And just think, what if Adam and Eve had not eaten the tree? What if they didn't? What if they actually were these good, little unknowing beings, and they never ate the tree? As an axiologist, I would say, well, did the tree go away? So was it just one test? Was it just one test God gave? Or was it a booby trap that eventually would entrap humanity? So God set it up that way. Because if I think, what if they didn't eat the tree? The tree wasn't going to go anywhere. They were still going to be in the Garden of Eden. And so even if it was 1,000 years later, someone would eventually eat the tree, condemn all of humanity. So it's almost like God designed, to talk about intelligent design, this is totally an unmoral design, to design the booby trap of the tree of lies so that they can eat of it and understand the truth of what it is to be moral, and then condemn all of humanity for this act. It is just preposterous. Anyone who has any ethics to me and understands morality should be offended greatly at this story. If it is true, it is absolutely that God is an immoral God. There is no way around it. Thus, you either have to say the story didn't happen that way, or you have to somehow cognitively dissident, not understand what morality would be. It's like it has no connection. When I talk to some Christians, they say, oh, well, you don't understand, Damien. God owns us. He can do what he wants. Really? Is that moral? Is that a moral statement? God owns us. He can do anything he wants. So you're saying that what? God is outside of morality? If he's outside of morality, why call him good? And if he really isn't good, why call him anything but a monster? You're just saying that it's okay if he's a monster. Okay, I agree, he's a monster. So then we can hate him. We can understand he's a monster. We can understand that what he's doing is not okay. It really has to understand that we have to hold things accountable. It's like words, like using any word we want. Words make a difference. So, is it really okay that this God is allowed to be called good when it doesn't have good qualities? Because what's a good quality? What would be a good God? Just think, if you could invent a God right now, would you really invent a God that creates hell, that punishes, all of humanity for the sins of one or two ignorant people? Really? That's the God that you would create? It is. So I just think it's so funny when people ask, why are you an atheist? I can't help but be an atheist. And not only that, I can't help but be an axiological atheist, because to me, I understand what value is. So, I just think it's and also I think another thing too is when you explain axiological atheism. So the first stance of an axiological atheist is basically apatheist. In other words, it's almost like humanism does. Humanism says we're good without God. They're not, in a sense, denying God in humanism. Secular humanism does that more. But humanism itself just says we're good without God. In other words, we can do things and we don't have to resort to God. So in a sense, an axiological atheist starts with in their own mind, not dealing with people, in their own mind, that this idea of God's religion is just nonsense. It's not worth wasting my time on. Just go live your life. Yeah. Just go do good. The second thing that you think is, well, as an atheist or an agnostic with an I, is that the God concept is not a concept. It's just this empty bucket term that people put stuff in and they take stuff out whether they want to or not, or they have a holy book that kind of gives a thing, a little starting template to this little empty box, and they put stuff in and take stuff out, because all Christians don't believe the same. You have the one true book, and yet you don't have the one true Christian. So you don't even have the one true conception of what God is from the Christian one book. But so you have this little template, and I realized every single thing needs to be proven. Every aspect of the nature, everything. But you can't start with, I know this nature and I go look for it. No, you'd have to look at the world and then assume that the only answer would be this thing. And doing that, you realize that there's nothing even to start doubting. There's nothing. It's like saying, well, a God at the most limited thing is a supernatural something. Right? I mean, let's live it. If you take away all the morality and the best, the good, the immortal, and all that nonsense, it would have to at least be supernatural. And you look at nature, you look at science, the one thing that's been proven over and over again is there absolutely is no evidence of supernatural magic anything. No prayers, no miracles, no nothing. So, there's nothing to start filling this empty God box with. There's no magic, no mystery, no nothing. And every mystery that's ever been thought could possibly be towards a God, science has come along and found, nope, there's a natural explanation for that. And it's just, so to me that's why an axiological atheist is an agnostic. There's nothing to believe. There's nothing to even doubt. There is nothing. It's just an empty term. It's like saying Stay Puft the Marshmallow Man, Jolly the Green Giant. It doesn't mean anything. Spider-Man. I mean, it's just something that people are choosing to believe. And then the next thing is, of course, the axiological atheist is an atheist. But if they're asked, do you believe? No, they do not believe. So, but that doesn't stop there, because if you're an axiological atheist, you've made a value judgment of the God itself, or the God claim, or theism in general, is that these things are harmful, they remove value from humans, and thus, the axiological atheist is also an anti-theist. And like I said, not that all of them have to be, But in general, an axiological atheist will also be an anti-religionist. But that is little more towards personal choice and not directly connected to what an axiological atheist is.